Zekthara pressed her scaled fingers against the cold metal controls of her scout ship. The blue planet below looked peaceful from space. White clouds swirled over green and brown landmasses. It seemed like any other world she had studied before. Her ship's computers worked quietly, scanning the planet called Earth. The readings showed a young civilization. They had nuclear weapons, but only simple rockets. Their cities glowed with electric lights, but they had not yet spread to other worlds. The data matched perfectly with what the hegemony called an easy target. Zekthara had done this job for 30 cycles. She found worlds for the hegemony to conquer. This one would be simple. The creatures called humans were still fighting each other. Their weapons were weak compared to hegemony technology. In 2 years, the conquest fleet would arrive and claim another world for the Empire. She moved her ship closer to get better readings. The planet's gravity was much stronger than most worlds she knew. The air was thick with a gas mixture that would poison most galactic species. Somehow, the humans lived in this environment every day. Zekthara watched the humans through her ship's sensors. They moved differently than other species. Where most beings would walk carefully on such a heavy world, humans ran and jumped. They played rough games where they crashed into each other on purpose. Children fell from climbing structures and simply got up and continued playing. The temperature readings confused her. Parts of the planet were hot enough to kill most life forms, while other areas stayed frozen all year. Yet humans lived in both places. They wore simple coverings and somehow survived conditions that would require full life support systems for her people. She studied their cities more carefully. The humans had built massive structures that reached toward the sky, defying the planet's crushing gravity. Their roads stretched across continents, connecting settlements through dangerous wilderness areas. They had turned their hostile world into something that worked for them. The wildlife data made Zekthara pause. Earth was filled with predators. Massive creatures with sharp teeth lived in the oceans. Smaller but deadly animals hunted in packs on land. Tiny organisms caused diseases that could kill in days. Yet humans not only survived among all these dangers, they seemed to enjoy studying and even protecting these deadly creatures. Zekthara watched humans swimming in water where she could see dangerous sea life. Others walked through forests full of predators, carrying only simple tools. Some even climbed the planet's mountains for no reason except to reach the top. Her computers listed mountain climbing as purposeless exposure to lethal conditions. But humans did it for something they called fun. The weather patterns showed another puzzle. Earth had violent storms that could level cities. The ground shook regularly from underground forces. Fire mountains exploded and covered huge areas with burning rock. The humans simply rebuilt their homes and continued living in these dangerous zones. She recorded a human settlement built right next to an active fire mountain. The humans knew it could explode again, but they stayed because the soil was good for growing food. They had decided the risk was worth taking. This kind of thinking made no sense to her training in conquest assessment. Zekthara's scanners picked up human communication signals. She listened to their news broadcasts and entertainment. The humans talked casually about surviving hurricanes, earthquakes, and floods. They discussed these deadly events the way other species might talk about mild weather changes. One broadcast showed humans rescuing others during a massive storm. They flew small aircraft through dangerous winds to reach trapped people. The rescuers knew they might die, but they went anyway. The rescued humans thanked them and went back to rebuilding their damaged homes. Another signal showed humans competing in something called extreme sports. They threw themselves from great heights with only thin fabric to slow their fall. Others raced down steep mountain slopes on narrow boards, avoiding trees and rocks at high speeds. They did these things for enjoyment. Zekthara tried to understand this behavior. In her culture, unnecessary risk was considered a mental illness. Species that took foolish chances died out quickly. Yet humans seemed to seek out danger whenever their lives became too safe. She watched human medical facilities and saw more confusing data. Humans regularly survived injuries that would kill most galactic species. They had procedures to cut open their own bodies to fix problems inside. Humans donated parts of themselves to save other humans. Their bodies could heal from damage that would be permanent for her people. The military readings worried her most. Humans had been fighting wars for their entire recorded history. They had weapons designed to kill thousands at once. But they also fought with simple tools, and even their bare hands. The humans had somehow survived conflicts that destroyed entire civilizations. Zekthara finished her initial report. According to all standard measurements, Earth should be rated as a simple conquest. The humans had weak technology and spent most of their energy fighting each other. The hegemony's war fleet would easily defeat their primitive military forces. But something felt wrong about this assessment. As she prepared to leave Earth's orbit, Zekthara took one last look at the planet below. The humans continued their strange lives, surviving on their dangerous world as if it were the most natural thing in the galaxy. She transmitted her report to the hegemony and began the long journey home. In 2 years, Admiral Corven's conquest fleet would arrive to claim Earth. Zekthara wondered if the humans would be as easy to defeat as her report suggested. Deep in her mind, she had a troubling thought. What if a species that could thrive on such a deadly world might be more dangerous than anyone realized? Admiral Corven stood before the massive viewing screen showing the star charts. 200 ships of the 47th Conquest Fleet moved through space toward their target. The blue dot marked as Sol 3 grew slightly larger each day as they traveled toward what should be another easy victory. Corven had led 17 successful conquests in his military career. The pattern was always the same. His fleet would arrive at a primitive world, demand surrender, and face weak resistance. Most species gave up quickly when they saw the size of his force. Those who fought back rarely lasted more than a few days. The report from Scout Zekthara had been typical. Earth showed a young civilization with simple technology and internal conflicts. Their most powerful weapons were crude nuclear devices that could barely damage one of his ships. The humans spent more time fighting each other than developing their defenses. 3 months before reaching Earth, Corven's communication officers detected radio signals from the planet. This was normal procedure. Studying the target's communications helped plan the conquest strategy. Usually, the signals showed fear and confusion as primitive species detected the approaching fleet. But the human signals were different. They were not military communications or emergency broadcasts. Most were what humans called entertainment and news. The translation computers worked to decode the strange human languages. Lieutenant Vex brought Corven the first translated message. It came from what appeared to be a human educational facility. A young human female was reading something called a school report about her ancestor. Corven listened to the translation with growing confusion. The child spoke about someone called her great-grandfather, who had participated in something called D-Day. She described how thousands of humans had climbed out of boats into enemy fire, knowing that many would die. The translation software struggled with human military terms. Phrases like acceptable losses and necessary sacrifice had no direct equivalent in hegemony language. The idea of deliberately choosing to die for others was so foreign that the computers flagged it as a translation error. Corven ordered his xenopsychology team to analyze the message more carefully. Dr. Thane, his chief scientist, reported back within hours. Her findings made Corven's blood run cold. According to human historical records, D-Day was just one battle in a global conflict they called World War II. During this war, humans had killed over 70 million of their own species. Not in a conquest by outside forces, but in a fight among themselves that lasted 6 years. But the most disturbing part was what came after. Instead of collapsing from such massive losses, human civilization had rebuilt itself stronger than before. They had turned their weapons technology into tools for space exploration and global communication. Dr. Thane showed Corven more data from human transmissions. Humans had been fighting continuous wars for thousands of years. They had survived multiple attempts by their own species to wipe out entire populations. Each time, they had recovered and grown more powerful. The humans had faced plagues that killed millions, natural disasters that destroyed whole regions, and ice ages that should have ended their civilization. Every challenge had made them stronger, rather than weaker. Corven studied the human military history with his tactical officers. Commander Rask pointed out details that made the entire command crew nervous. Humans had developed something called guerrilla warfare, where small groups could resist much larger forces for years. They had tactics for fighting in every possible environment on their planet. The humans had a concept called scorched earth, where they would destroy everything useful rather than let enemies have it. They would rather see their own lands burned than surrender them to invaders. Most concerning was human behavior during sieges. Other species typically surrendered when surrounded and cut off from supplies. Humans had examples of cities holding out for months or even years under siege conditions. Some had continued fighting even after running out of food and ammunition. Lieutenant Vex brought more intercepted communications to the briefing. These were human entertainment programs called movies and books. The stories showed humans fighting against impossible odds and somehow winning through determination and sacrifice. One story showed a small group of humans fighting an entire alien invasion fleet. Despite having inferior weapons and being vastly outnumbered, the humans found ways to defeat the invaders. The story treated this as normal human behavior rather than something extraordinary. Dr. Thane analyzed these entertainment signals and made a troubling discovery. The stories were not just fantasy. They reflected real human values and expectations. Humans genuinely believed they could defeat any enemy if they were willing to pay the price. Commander Rask ran combat simulations based on the new intelligence about human fighting capabilities. The results were disturbing. Even with the hegemony's superior technology, conquering Earth would require destroying most of the planet to stop human resistance. The tactical computers predicted that humans would use their own infrastructure as weapons. They would collapse their cities on advancing troops, poison their water supplies, and fight from hidden positions in their vast wilderness areas. The conquest would take years instead of days. Worse, the humans seemed to have no concept of honorable surrender. Other species had rules about when a fight was over. Humans appeared to keep fighting until they were all dead or the enemy was destroyed. Admiral Corvin faced a decision no hegemony commander had ever confronted. His fleet was powerful enough to destroy Earth's military forces in direct battle. But conquering the planet and controlling the human population might be impossible without killing them all. The hegemony wanted new worlds to expand their empire, not empty planets stripped of all useful life. A conquest that required exterminating the entire population would be considered a failure. Corven studied the approaching blue planet on his viewing screen. In a few months, his fleet would arrive in human space. For the first time in his military career, he was not certain that conquest was the right strategy. He prepared an emergency communication to Hegemony Central Command. The message would take weeks to reach the homeworlds, but his superiors needed to know what they were really facing on Earth. The humans were not just another primitive species waiting to be conquered. They were something the galaxy had never seen before. The emergency transmission from Admiral Corvin reached Hegemony Central Command after traveling for 3 weeks through space. High Chancellor Vorth read the message in his private chamber, far beneath the capital city on the homeworld. Corvin's report contained detailed analysis of human communication intercepts. The data showed a species unlike anything in the hegemony's vast database of conquered worlds. Vorth called an immediate meeting of the War Council. The council chamber filled with representatives from 12 different species that made up the hegemony's ruling class. General Crane arrived first, his insect-like features clicking with anticipation of discussing another simple conquest. Admiral Flex slithered to her position, confident that her fleet strategies had never failed. Vorth activated the main display and showed them Corven's transmission. The room fell silent as they read the tactical assessment. Human civilization was not what their initial survey had indicated. Dr. Yalon, the hegemony's chief xenobiologist, stood to address the council. She had spent days analyzing the human data since receiving Corvin's report. Her findings were more disturbing than anyone had expected. Humans evolved on what the galactic community would classify as a death world. Earth's gravity was twice the standard for most inhabited planets. The atmospheric pressure could crush beings from normal worlds. The temperature variations would kill most species within hours. But Earth's hostile environment was only the beginning. The planet was filled with predators that had shaped human evolution for millions of years. Large carnivores, with massive teeth and claws. Smaller pack hunters that coordinated attacks. Microscopic organisms that invaded bodies and caused death from within. Dr. Yalon showed images of Earth's wildlife that made several council members retreat to safer distances. Creatures called sharks that could sense blood from great distances. Land predators called bears that could tear apart metal with their claws. Tiny spiders whose bite could kill in minutes. Humans had not only survived among these deadly creatures, they had learned to hunt many of them for food. They had domesticated some predators to help them hunt other predators. The concept was so foreign that most council members needed the explanation repeated several times. General Crane interrupted the briefing to point out that dangerous wildlife existed on many worlds. His own species had evolved fighting large predators. What made humans different from other warrior species? Dr. Yalon activated recordings of human entertainment broadcasts. The council watched in growing horror as humans deliberately sought out dangerous activities for something they called recreation. The recordings showed humans jumping from flying aircraft with only fabric parachutes to slow their fall. Others climbed vertical rock faces using only their hands and feet. Some humans deliberately entered water with dangerous sea creatures just to observe them. One recording showed a human celebration where thousands gathered to run in front of large, angry animals with sharp horns. The humans considered this entertaining rather than suicidal behavior. Admiral Flex questioned whether these recordings might be propaganda designed to make humans seem more dangerous than they actually were. Doctor. Yalon showed her proof that the activities were real and common among human populations. The evidence included medical data showing humans regularly survived injuries that would be fatal to most galactic species. Human emergency medical services existed specifically to treat people injured during recreational risk-taking activities. Commander Vex from Corvin's fleet had continued intercepting human signals during their approach to Earth. The new data showed human responses to natural disasters that challenged everything the hegemony knew about intelligent behavior. When volcanoes erupted near human settlements, instead of fleeing to safety, many humans moved closer to study the events. When massive storms threatened their cities, rescue teams flew directly into the dangerous weather to help trapped people. Human scientists regularly traveled to the most dangerous parts of their planet to conduct research. They descended into active volcanoes, explored deep ocean trenches filled with crushing pressure, and lived in frozen wastelands where exposed skin would die in seconds. General Crane reviewed human military history with his tactical staff. The results broke several of their strategic analysis computers. Human warfare violated basic principles that governed conflict throughout the galaxy. Most species fought until facing certain defeat, then surrendered to preserve their population. Humans had examples of fighting to the death, even when victory was impossible. They preferred to destroy themselves rather than accept conquest. The concept of guerrilla warfare particularly troubled the military analysts. Humans could fade into their planet's vast wilderness areas and continue fighting indefinitely. Earth had millions of places where small groups could hide and launch attacks on occupying forces. Dr. Yalon presented the most disturbing finding last. Human population psychology showed they became more unified and dangerous when threatened by outside forces. Species that normally fought each other would instantly cooperate against external enemies. Humans had a documented history of putting aside their deepest conflicts to face common threats. Ancient enemies became allies within days when facing invasion. The more desperate the situation became, the more creatively and violently humans responded. The War Council faced an unprecedented situation. Every previous conquest had followed predictable patterns. Primitive species either surrendered quickly or mounted brief, hopeless resistance before accepting defeat. Humans showed no indication they would follow these patterns. Their entire evolutionary history suggested they would fight until either the invaders were destroyed or every human was dead. High Chancellor Vorth studied the data one final time before making his decision. The hegemony had built their empire through careful calculation of costs and benefits. Some victories were too expensive to be worth achieving. He authorized an emergency transmission to Admiral Corvin's fleet. New orders would reach them just before they entered Earth's solar system. For the first time in hegemony history, a conquest fleet would be ordered to attempt peaceful contact, rather than immediate military action. The galaxy was about to learn what happened when someone tried to make friends with humans instead of enemies. The emergency transmission from Hegemony Central Command reached Admiral Corvin's fleet just as they entered the outer edge of the human solar system. Corvin read the new orders 3 times before accepting what they said. Instead of beginning immediate conquest operations, he was ordered to initiate peaceful first contact protocols. The hegemony wanted to attempt diplomacy with the humans before risking military confrontation. Corvin had never used peaceful contact procedures in his entire military career. The hegemony's standard approach was to demand surrender and then destroy any resistance. Now he had to figure out how to talk to a species that might be too dangerous to fight. The new intelligence data that came with his orders made the situation even more complicated. Analysis of human communication signals had revealed disturbing details about their society and psychology. Humans treated warfare as a subject for detailed study. They had schools dedicated to teaching military strategy and tactics. Every human civilization had professional warriors who spent their entire lives learning how to fight more effectively. But the most concerning discovery was human attitudes toward alien contact. Unlike other species, who typically feared or worshipped visitors from space, humans seemed excited about the possibility of meeting other intelligent life. Human entertainment was filled with stories about contact with alien species. Most of these stories followed similar patterns. Humans would either fight the aliens, befriend them, or find ways to learn from them. Very few human stories showed their species being easily conquered. Dr. Thane, Corvin's xenopsychologist, analyzed hundreds of human films and books about alien contact. She found that humans consistently portrayed themselves as either equals or superiors to visiting species, even when the aliens had superior technology. The human stories that showed aliens winning usually involved the aliens being defeated eventually through human determination, creativity, or sacrifice. Humans seemed genuinely unable to imagine permanent defeat by outside forces. Commander Rask monitored human military communications as the fleet approached. The humans had detected the approaching ships and were responding exactly as their psychological profile predicted. Instead of panic or preparation for surrender, human military forces were mobilizing for combat. Radio chatter between their defense installations showed excitement rather than fear. Some humans were actually looking forward to fighting aliens. Corvin realized that the humans were preparing to resist his fleet, even though they had to know their technology was far inferior. This confirmed the intelligence reports about human willingness to fight against impossible odds. But Corvin also noticed something else in the human communications. Along with military preparations, human scientists and diplomats were also organizing for possible peaceful contact. The humans were preparing for both war and friendship simultaneously. Following his new orders, Corvin transmitted a message toward Earth announcing peaceful intentions. The message used standard galactic diplomatic protocols and offered to establish formal relations between species. The human response came faster than expected. Instead of the cautious replies typical of primitive species, humans transmitted back immediately, with multiple different messages. Human scientists sent detailed information about their species and planet. Human military leaders demanded to know hegemony intentions and capabilities. Human diplomats proposed meetings to establish mutual understanding. Most surprisingly, Ordinary human citizens sent thousands of personal messages welcoming the alien visitors. Many humans seemed more curious than afraid about meeting beings from other worlds. Dr. Thane analyzed the human response patterns and found them unlike anything in hegemony records. Most species either submitted immediately or fought desperately. Humans appeared to be doing both simultaneously while also trying to make friends. Corvin selected a location for the first meeting halfway between his fleet and Earth. Human representatives would meet hegemony diplomats at a neutral position where both groups could feel secure. The humans arrived in a small spacecraft that looked like it was built from spare parts and determination. Corvin's sensors showed the human ship had minimal weapons and basic life support systems. Yet the three humans aboard showed no signs of fear or intimidation. Ambassador Chen led the human delegation. She was a middle-aged female who spoke with calm confidence, despite being surrounded by ships that could destroy her planet. Her assistants included a military officer and a scientist, both equally composed. Corvin met them aboard his flagship with a full security detail. Standard hegemony procedure was to demonstrate overwhelming power during first contact to encourage submission. He expected the humans to be impressed and frightened by his ship's size and capabilities. Instead, Ambassador Chen complimented the engineering and asked technical questions about faster-than-light travel. Colonel Martinez, the military officer, studied the ship's layout with professional interest. Dr. Park, the scientist, requested permission to examine some of the alien technology. The humans treated the meeting as an opportunity to learn rather than a prelude to conquest or submission. They showed the same curiosity about alien technology that they demonstrated toward dangerous wildlife on their own planet. Ambassador Chen presented the human position clearly. Earth welcomed peaceful contact with other species and wanted to establish trade and cultural exchange. However, humans would resist any attempt at conquest with everything they possessed. She explained this without anger or threats, simply as a statement of fact. Humans were willing to be friends or enemies, but they would not accept being slaves or victims. Colonel Martinez added that human military analysis suggested the hegemony fleet could destroy Earth's major cities and military installations. However, the human population would continue fighting from their vast wilderness areas until either the invaders left or every human was dead. Dr. Park offered to share human scientific knowledge in exchange for alien technology. She pointed out that species with different evolutionary backgrounds might discover things others had missed. Corvin found himself in a situation no hegemony officer had faced before. The humans were simultaneously offering friendship and promising devastating resistance to any aggression. As the meeting continued, Corvin realized that humans might be the first species powerful enough to give the hegemony a choice. Previous contacts had been between the powerful hegemony and helpless primitive worlds. Earth represented something new, a young civilization that might already be too dangerous to conquer, but also too valuable to destroy. For the first time in his career, Admiral Corvin was considering whether the hegemony might need to change its approach to expanding through the galaxy. 3 months after first contact, Ambassador Chen stood in the main conference chamber of Hegemony Central Command. The massive room had been designed to intimidate visitors from conquered worlds. Its high ceiling and dark walls usually made representatives feel small and helpless. Chen studied the alien architecture with the same interest she had shown everything else about galactic civilization. She took notes on the construction methods and asked her assistant to record the acoustic properties for later analysis. High Chancellor Vorth watched the human ambassador with growing amazement. Every other species that had entered this chamber had shown fear, submission, or desperate anger. Chen acted like a tourist visiting an interesting museum. The formal negotiations had been unlike anything in hegemony history. Instead of discussing terms of surrender, the humans had presented proposals for mutual cooperation and shared governance of galactic space. Dr. Park had shared human scientific discoveries that solved several problems the hegemony had struggled with for centuries. Human research into surviving on dangerous worlds provided insights that helped other species colonize previously uninhabitable planets. Colonel Martinez had demonstrated human military tactics that impressed even veteran hegemony commanders. Humans had developed strategies for fighting in environments that other species considered impossible battlegrounds. But the most significant change came from human social concepts that challenged basic hegemony assumptions about how civilizations should interact. Chen had proposed something called the Galactic Cooperative Council. Instead of one empire controlling others through conquest, multiple species would work together as equals. Each civilization would contribute their unique strengths to benefit everyone. The idea seemed insane to most hegemony leaders. Their entire society was built on the concept of strong species dominating weaker ones. Cooperation was something that happened between equal powers, not between conquerors and conquered peoples. But High Chancellor Vorth had studied the human proposal carefully. The mathematics were compelling. A cooperative system could produce more resources, scientific advancement, and military security than the current conquest model. The hegemony was already beginning to face problems that conquest could not solve. They controlled thousands of worlds, but many subject species provided only minimal contributions. Rebellions were becoming more frequent and expensive to suppress. Some conquered civilizations had simply refused to advance their technology under hegemony rule. They provided basic resources, but no innovation or improvement. The empire was growing larger, but not necessarily stronger. Humans offered a different approach. Species that joined the Cooperative Council willingly would contribute their best efforts to shared goals. Scientific research would be pooled. Military forces would protect all members equally. The proposal included provisions for species that preferred independence. The Cooperative Council would not force membership, but it would not tolerate aggressive expansion by non-member civilizations. Chen explained that humans had experience with this type of organization on their own world. Despite their history of constant warfare, humans had eventually learned to cooperate when facing common challenges. The same species that had fought devastating wars against each other now worked together to explore space, cure diseases, and protect their shared environment. Human cooperation was not perfect, but it was effective. General Crane objected that the cooperative system would not work with species that preferred conquest and domination. Some civilizations would always choose war over cooperation. Chen agreed that such species existed. The Cooperative Council would need strong defensive capabilities to protect peaceful members. But military force would be used for protection rather than expansion. She pointed out that humans had considerable experience dealing with aggressive neighbors. Sometimes diplomacy worked. Sometimes economic pressure was effective. When necessary, humans could fight with intensity that matched any warrior species in the galaxy. The difference was that humans preferred to turn enemies into friends whenever possible. Even after devastating conflicts, humans often became close allies with their former opponents. Admiral Corvin supported the human proposal based on his personal experience with Earth. Attempting to conquer humans would have been extremely costly, even if successful. Working with them as partners had already produced significant benefits for the hegemony. The debate continued for weeks as hegemony leadership struggled with concepts that challenged their entire worldview. Some council members argued for maintaining traditional conquest policies. Others saw opportunities in the cooperative approach. High Chancellor Vorth made the final decision after consulting with leaders from various hegemony species. The Empire would officially transform into the Galactic Cooperative Council, with Earth as a founding member. The transition would take years to complete, but the basic structure would change immediately. New member species would be invited to join, voluntarily. Existing subject worlds would be offered the choice between independence and cooperative membership. Many species chose to remain within the new system as equal partners. Others requested independence and received it peacefully. A few attempted to establish their own conquest empires and were quickly defeated by joint cooperative council forces. Chen worked with hegemony officials to establish the new governmental structure. Humans provided expertise in managing cooperation between different groups, while hegemony species contributed knowledge of galactic-scale organization. The first cooperative council session included representatives from 47 different species. They met on a new station built specifically for interspecies cooperation. The station's design incorporated architectural elements from many different civilizations. Dr. Park led the new Galactic Scientific Exchange, where researchers from different worlds worked together on projects that no single species could complete alone. Breakthrough discoveries happened faster than anyone had expected. Colonel Martinez helped organize the cooperative defense forces. Military units from various species trained together to protect Council worlds from external threats and internal conflicts. High Chancellor Vorth, now called First Speaker, watched the transformation with amazement. The same organizational principles that had made humans successful on their dangerous homeworld were reshaping galactic civilization. Chen stood at the viewing port of the Cooperative Council station, looking out at ships from dozens of different worlds. Human children played with alien youngsters in the station's recreation areas, while their parents worked on problems that affected the entire galaxy. The species that had once been marked for conquest had instead conquered the galaxy through cooperation and friendship. Humans had not destroyed their enemies, but had turned the entire concept of enemies into something obsolete. Earth's greatest weapon had never been their ability to survive on a death world or fight impossible battles. It was their talent for making cooperation more attractive than conflict. The galaxy was becoming a place worth living in for everyone.